Imagine a political debate.
Right.
But strip away all the actual policies.
Right. Forget the tax brackets.
Yeah, forget the tax brackets, the zoning laws, the healthcare proposals. Picture a debate not as this clash of ideas, but as a battle of linguistic architecture.
Ooh, I like that term.
Because the words politicians use, they don't just describe the reality we live in, right? They actively build it. And today, I really want to be clear about this. We are not looking at right-wing or left-wing politics.
Absolutely not. That's not the goal here.
We are putting the rhetoric of JD Vance under a microscope. And the mission isn't to figure out if we agree with him or condemn him. We want to figure out precisely how this linguistic architecture is engineered to shape human behavior.
And that structural approach is it's essential here. Drawing on extensive research from places like MOOCIT, PolitiFact, Reuters, CBS, Britannica, our mission in this deep dive is strictly analytical. We're looking at the mechanics under the hood. We really want to understand how specific terms are deployed across the political spectrum, honestly, to mark groups, trigger human emotions, and set agendas.
Because it works on the human brain in a very specific way.
It does. And the research points to two foundational tools that are doing the heavy lifting in this kind of rhetoric. We have framing and othering.
Okay, let's unpack framing first.
So Britannica defines framing as highlighting certain facts of a situation while completely hiding others.
It's basically like choosing a camera lens.
Yes, exactly.
Like you use a wide-angle lens, you show this massive, complex landscape with all the interacting parts, right? But swap that for a macro lens, and you force the viewer to look only at, say, the jagged teeth of a single gear.
Right, and you just ignore the entire machine around it.
Exactly.
Taking that camera analogy a step further, the source material categorizes Vance's language as relying really heavily on that macro focus.
He's not doing the wide-angle thing.
No, he isn't generally building these long-winded, complex policy arguments. He relies on condensed buzzwords.
Buzzwords.
Right. And neurologically speaking, these highly efficient, emotionally charged terms, they're designed to completely bypass the brain's prefrontal cortex.
Which is where the logic lives.
Exactly, where critical thinking and nuance happen. And they go straight to the amygdala.
The emotional core.
Yes, the fight-or-flight center.
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, we need to treat these political speeches less like policy debates and more like, I don't know, lines of behavioral code.
Precisely. They are linguistic inputs designed for very specific emotional outputs. Which brings us to the second tool, right? Othering.
Othering.
Yeah, this is the linguistic creation of an in-group, a we, that is deliberately contrasted against a threatening or somehow deficient to them.
And the most potent place to construct that we is around the very foundation of society itself, right? The family.
Oh, absolutely. It's universally resonant.
So there's this 2021 Fox News appearance. Vance targets Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And he states the country is being run by childless cat ladies who, quote, don't really have a direct stake in it.
There's so much to unpack there. Look closely at the layers of linguistic engineering packed into that really short phrase.
It's dense.
Very dense. First, you have the highly gendered cultural stereotype of the cat lady.
Right.
Which is an image historically used to signify isolation, eccentricity, basically a departure from societal norms.
It's inherently dismissive.
Right, but the real architectural weight is in the second half of the phrase. The don't really have a direct stake in it part.
Yeah, because he's not talking about their voting records.
Right.
Or their taxes.
No, he's talking about their biology.
Wow.
He is shifting the focus entirely away from their elected offices or their democratic legitimacy. The language literally reduces their civic value to their biological parenthood.
But, CBS News reported on his later defense of this quote.
Right, he walked it back a bit.
Yeah, he argued he wasn't criticizing people who couldn't have children for medical reasons. He said he was targeting what he viewed as an anti-family Democratic Party.
Which is an important piece of context.
It is. And ABC News also noted the irony here. Considering Kamala Harris as a stepmother, she's affectionately called Momola by her family.
Right.
So his frame ignores that reality entirely, narrowing the definition of family to strict biological reproduction. But I have to push back a little here, just to be fair.
Sure.
Isn't advocating for pro-family policies just totally normal, standard political practice? Like, why is this specific phrasing functionally different?
That's a great question. Because yes, advocating for families is a standard, healthy policy debate. Every politician does it.
Right. Everyone loves families.
Exactly. The linguistic trick here isn't the elevation of the family, The mechanism is elevating one group by explicitly devaluing the civic legitimacy of another group.
Oh, I see.
It's the difference between saying, you know, families are essential to our future and saying, people without biological children have no legitimate stake in our country's future.
That's a massive shift.
It is. The language takes the concept of democratic equality, where every citizen's voice theoretically holds equal weight, and it transforms it into a reproductive qualification.
And once you successfully use language to redefine who counts as a legitimate family, the next logical step is to redefine who gets to protect those families.
Yes.
Which brings us directly from the private sphere of the home right into the public sphere of the classroom.
The classroom. The rhetorical stakes are instantly magnified the moment children are introduced to the conversation.
So we see quotes from Vance directed at Randi Weingarten, the president of the American Federation of Teachers. And he accuses her of trying to brainwash the minds of our children.
Specifically contrasting our children against people without kids.
The pronoun our is just doing a massive amount of heavy lifting there.
Oh, it's doing all the work. It constructs this impenetrable, collective, moral we.
Right.
The children belong to the moral in-group, and the union president is framed as this hostile, foreign entity attempting to enact psychological violence.
Psychological violence.
Yeah, brainwashing them.
And it escalates so rapidly from there. Uncloseted media highlights Vance's use of the term groomers and warnings against crazy gender theory in schools.
Yes.
He even introduced legislation in the Senate. GovInfo records it as the Protect Children's Innocence Act, which, framed a ban on gender-affirming care not as a complex medical debate, but as a battle to protect childhood purity.
This perfectly illustrates a really crucial sociological concept. It's outlined in the research from Simply Psychology, Stanley Cohen's theory of moral panic.
Moral panic. Let's dig into that.
So a moral panic occurs when a condition, an episode, or a group emerges to become defined as a massive existential threat to societal values.
So it's not just a standard political disagreement over, school budgets.
No. It requires creating a villain.
A villain.
What Cohen called folk devils. These visible, highly stigmatized targets for public outrage.
So dropping the word groomer into a political debate isn't just making a policy argument. It's pulling the fire alarm in a crowded theater.
That is the perfect analogy. You are instantly triggering a panic response.
And if you're the one pulling the alarm, you're the hero.
Exactly. And consider what happens to reasoned debate when the fire alarm is ringing.
Everyone runs for the exits.
It ceases to exist. What's fascinating here is how the language completely eliminates the middle ground. You are no longer arguing with a political opponent over the nuances of curriculum development.
Right, or age-appropriate reading material.
You are framing your opponent as a literal, physical, and sexual threat to children. Linguistically, that makes the person using the word groomer the unquestionable moral savior.
Because you can't compromise with a groomer.
Exactly. You cannot compromise with a threat like that. Therefore, the language mechanically shuts down democratic deliberation entirely.
Wow. Okay, so we have the internal threats established. We've got the politicians without biological kids, the teachers allegedly brainwashing students. But the rhetoric requires external threats as well, right, to maintain that macro lens focus we talked about.
You need a threat from the outside to unify the inside.
And the focal point for this in the research is Springfield, Ohio. Vance repeatedly used the phrase Haitian illegal immigrants who were generally causing chaos.
That phrase alone is just a masterclass in othering. It synthesizes national origin, a claim of criminality, and a collective blame for societal breakdown, all into a single digestible soundbite.
But the crucial context here, provided by PolitiFact, completely destabilizes that frame.
Yes, it does.
Their investigation found that the vast majority of Haitian migrants in Springfield were actually in the country legally. They had temporary protected status or humanitarian parole.
Right. So the word illegal is deliberately deployed to reframe a legal bureaucratic status into a criminal one.
And then we get to the CNN interview, and this is where the language escalates to catastrophic levels. He claimed the town was being, quote, ravaged by 20,000 migrants, and that communicable diseases like HIV and TB had skyrocketed.
And again, the data directly contradicts the linguistic frame. PolitiFact and Reuters investigated these claims.
Right.
There was absolutely no evidence of the widely circulated internet rumors about stolen pets. Furthermore, health department data showed that overall communicable diseases in the county had actually dropped since 2018.
Now, to be fair to the situation, and we want to ensure we represent the full picture here, Springfield really did face sudden massive infrastructural stress, right, on their housing and the schools due to the rapid population increase.
Oh, absolutely. The municipal strain was an undeniable, documented fact.
Right.
But analyze the vocabulary used to describe it: ravaged and skyrocketing diseases. This shifts a solvable, albeit highly complex, infrastructure problem into the linguistic equivalent of a natural disaster.
Because you don't manage a town being ravaged.
Right. You flee it or you fight it. Furthermore, historically speaking, connecting marginalized minority groups to biological contagion and disease is a deeply entrenched, highly dangerous stigmatization tool.
It's old school othering.
It fundamentally moves the discourse from, we need emergency federal funding for our school system to these outsiders are physically infecting our bodies.
Okay, here's what gets really interesting for me. If the claims about the pets and the skyrocketing diseases were factually unsupported, why inject them into the national discourse at all? Like, what's the point?
That brings us to the actual strategy behind the words. In that same CNN interview, Vance stated, and this is quoted via The Verge, "If I have to create stories so that the American media actually pays attention to the suffering of the American people, then that's what I'm going to do."
If I have to create stories.
And that quote explicitly outlines the communication strategy we're analyzing. It reveals the 4 distinct layers of modern political communication highlighted in our source material.
Break those layers down for me.
Okay, layer 1 is the fact. Springfield experienced sudden municipal strain. Layer 2 is the interpretation. The government failed to manage this influx adequately.
Okay, standard politics so far.
Right. Layer 3 is the assertion. The Haitians are causing chaos and bringing disease. And layer 4 is the political narrative. A small American town is being actively destroyed by foreign outsiders, while the liberal elite completely ignores the suffering of everyday citizens.
And the mechanism driving this strategy is agenda setting.
Yes.
But I want to make sure we truly understand how that works mechanically, because it's not just about, getting on television, is it?
Not at all. Agenda setting in media theory is the ability of the news media to influence the importance placed on the topics of the public agenda.
Meaning, if a news item is covered frequently, the audience just assumes it's the most important issue.
Exactly. But in the digital age, politicians can reverse engineer this. By making highly emotional, even entirely unsubstantiated claims, they force media algorithms and human attention to prioritize their chosen topic over everything else.
So wait, if the media fact-checks the story and proves it wrong, doesn't that just play into the agenda setting anyway?
Oh, absolutely. Think about your own social media feed during that news cycle. Even if you were reading fact checks explicitly debunking the story about the pets, you were still spending your attention and cognitive energy on the topic of immigration in Springfield.
Wow. You're caught in the loop, regardless.
Precisely. A false claim can circulate wildly, fueled entirely by its own corrections and fact checks. When a politician acknowledges creating stories to draw attention, the boundary between a factual statement and a strategic bid for attention completely collapses.
The truth value doesn't even matter anymore.
The truth value becomes entirely secondary to its ability to hijack the news cycle.
But the real-world fallout of hijacking that cycle is severe. I mean, AP News reported that Springfield experienced multiple bomb threats, evacuations of schools, and heightened security directly following this rhetoric.
The words may be a strategy, but the panic they induce is profoundly real.
Okay, so we've seen how language can be weaponized to create panic and chaos. But there's another side of this linguistic architecture, isn't there? Language can also be used to instantly shut down complex, deeply painful debates.
Yes, the moral shortcut.
Right. Our sources highlight a 2021 quote regarding the debate over abortion exceptions for cases of rape or incest.
A very heavy, very difficult topic.
Yeah. And according to PolitiFact, when asked about this, Vance responded with the proverb, "Two wrongs don't make a right." And he referred to the circumstances of a child's conception in these specific cases as inconvenient.
That proverb is performing tremendous, almost invisible linguistic work.
How so?
To understand the mechanics, we really have to look at how proverbs function neurologically. Proverbs act as cognitive shortcuts.
Like a mental cheat code.
Basically, yeah. When faced with an incredibly complex ethical, medical, and deeply traumatic situation, the human brain naturally experiences cognitive dissonance. It's uncomfortable.
Right, we don't like holding conflicting ideas.
Exactly. A proverb offers a pre-packaged resolution that relieves that dissonance without requiring deep, uncomfortable analytical thought.
They're essentially fast food ethics.
That is a very accurate way to frame it.
They taste like common sense, they're incredibly easy to swallow, but they completely lack nutritional nuance.
Exactly. And the specific linguistic mechanism happening here is called a perspective shift.
Perspective shift. Okay.
By deploying the phrase two wrongs, the proverb forces the listener to conceptually balance the equation. It actively equates the traumatic, violent assault with the medical procedure of abortion, presenting them as equal moral wrongs.
Which completely erases the asymmetrical trauma of the victim from the linguistic landscape.
Entirely. The victim's highly specific, agonizing experience is rhetorically smoothed over by a catchy, simplistic phrase.
And the word inconvenient.
Right. The word inconvenient further minimizes the trauma. It categorizes a profound physical and psychological violation as a mere logistical hurdle. It is a moral shortcut. The listener doesn't have to engage with the pain, the concept of bodily autonomy, or the nuanced medical ethics if they can simply plug the situation into a familiar, rhythmic proverb.
Stepping back to look at the entire structure we've walked through today, it becomes really clear that political language operates on a wide spectrum.
It really does.
On one end, you have what we might call enlightening language, right?
Right.
This is data-driven, it's focused on actual policy mechanisms, and it invites you, the listener, to understand the complexities of an issue.
And on the other end?
On the other end, you have agitating language. This is threat-based, emotionally volatile, relying on macro lenses, moral panics, and these moral shortcuts to bypass our logic and directly stimulate our fear receptors.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, recognizing the difference between enlightening and agitating language is your single best defense against manipulation.
Because we live in an ecosystem of absolute information overload.
Yes. You are bombarded with engineered messaging every time you open an app. Understanding these linguistic frames, how a word like groomer or a phrase like childless cat lady acts as a signal to trigger specific in-group anxieties. It allows you to pause.
Just take a breath.
Right. It gives you the cognitive space to ask yourself, am I reacting to a documented fact right now, or am I reacting to a carefully engineered word designed to bypass my critical thinking?
Are you surveying the whole landscape, or are you looking through the macro lens someone else handed you? Honestly, it is the most vital question you can ask as a consumer of information today.
I couldn't agree more.
And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We have just spent this entire deep dive analyzing how a human politician can alter our perceived reality, shift our focus, and trigger our deepest fears simply by carefully selecting and deploying specific words.
Very effectively, too.
Very effectively. But what happens to our democracy when algorithms and AI learn to generate these emotional trigger frames at an unprecedented scale?
That's a terrifying thought.
Right. If a human can build a linguistic trap this effectively, what kind of reality are the machines going to build for us? Are we ready for that? Because whether we are or not, the linguistic architecture of our future is already under construction.